Hi everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. This is the latest in a series of live streams that I've been doing, looking at the main characters of A Song of Ice and Fire and what might be happening with them in the Winds of Winter and beyond that into A Dream of Spring. Today we've got to Jaime Lannister. We've been working our way around. This is probably one of the last in this series. Got any ideas on other characters you'd like me to cover, do let me know in the comments. But Jaime Lannister is one of those characters that kind of divides, but we're always slightly on his side, I would say. And as always, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by explaining where, excuse me for one moment, explaining where Jaime is at in the books compared to the show. So where we've got to is that Jaime was involved in Tyrion escaping. If you cast your mind all the way back to when Tyrion was locked down in the Black Cells, and after the trial of champions and the Mountain had killed Oberyn Martell, who was there being the champion for Tyrion, Jaime is still convinced that Tyrion didn't do it. And he is the one who pressures Varys to release Tyrion. So he's there. While he's there, he kind of unburdens himself a bit as well, actually. And he doesn't know when he's going to see Tyrion again. As he knows Tyrion is going to have to go a long way away, probably to Essos. You'd think there's a very good chance that he never will see him again. So he wants to unburden himself of something. And this takes it all the way back to Tyrion's first wife. We've talked about her quite a bit when we were looking at Tyrion. And then what happened, or the story that Tyrion had been told, was that she was a whore, as Tywin would say. And yes, terrible things happened to her, but she never loved Tyrion in the first place. That was what he was told, and he was heartbroken that Jaime was like playing this sort of trick on him. But Jaime comes clean and says, actually, she wasn't. Okay, I told you that to cover it up. And Tyrion goes into this meltdown. This is what's playing through his mind as he goes up and kills his father and also Shay. And also, crucially at that point, in kind of lashing out at Jaime, he then starts coming out with all of these things to try and hurt Jaime. Jaime's hurt him, the one member of his family he thought he could always trust and love and be loved by. He feels betrayed by, so he lashes out and he tells him about all this string of lovers that Cersei has. He tells him that it was him who killed Joffrey, even though it wasn't, because he knows that Joffrey is Jaime's son secretly, and he wants to hurt him. So Jaime is devastated by all of this, and then his father dies, and he kind of he hangs around in King's Landing in a sort of a bit of a daze for a while. He stands out, standing guard over Tywin's body for all the way through the night, and eventually Cersei says, "Can you go off to sort out the Riverlands, because we've got a big geopolitical issue going on here, which is that the Riverlands, although, yes, Robb Stark was killed, we need to get rid of the people who are still supporting him. In particular, there are two places that need to be dealt with. One of them is Riverrun, and the other one is Raventree Hall." So Jaime sets off, and he goes to Riverrun first, and he deals with that in a way through Edmure Tully, and he gets Edmure Tully, who is the rightful lord there, gets him, who was their prisoner, to go in and then hand over the castle to him by threatening him. No force, no siege, no deaths, just by a clever use of tactics and maybe being slightly hard on poor Edmure. Then he goes to Raventree Hall. Raventree Hall, he does similar things. He negotiates. He manages to get Raventree Hall to also to come on side, and so he does win over the Riverlands, basically. But as a sort of an aside, there's a sort of a hint here that maybe this is showing a different side of Jaime. He's not immediately thinking of wars and glory and all the rest of it. He's trying to work out what's the best way of achieving this end. While he's up there, he runs across Lancel Lannister, and Lancel basically admits, yeah, he did sleep with Cersei. And so Jaime has confirmation that Tyrion was telling the truth. And then he gets a letter from Cersei that says, I've been imprisoned and I want you to be my champion. Come, help, save me. And he reads it and then he burns it. And this is showing that Jaime is shifting away from Cersei a lot earlier than he did, incidentally, on the show. He's shifting his affections away from her. And then when we last see him, he is there just outside the place called Pennytree, which, if you've read Duncan Egg, I'm sure will ring a few bells for you. But while he's there, Brienne comes to him and basically says, I need you to come with me to save Sansa. The hound's got her. And the last we hear is this rumor that reaches Cersei's ears that Jaime is seen going off with this woman in the Riverlands. That's where we leave the story. So what I'm going to do, as I always do, is I try and structure this around questions that I've got from my patrons. I will try and pick up as many questions as I can from the chat as I'm going through. I think we will definitely be digging into a whole load of things that, like the Jaime-Brienne relationship, what's going on with Cersei, Jaime's visions. If you've not read the books, then you might be unaware he's had a couple of fascinating visions that you can spend a long time trying to unpick, so we'll definitely cover them as well as where his story might end. So that's where we're roughly going to be going. Just before we went on air, we had a couple of super chats, so thank you so much. Distinguished Details saying, love your content, Robert. Thank you very much. Saying, I listen to your videos while I work. Thanks for keeping up with the things during all of this mess. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I'm just trying to do my bit to help provide some something that can bring us all together around something that we all love. So if I can do my bit in that, then it makes me very happy. Maura Lee, thank you so much. I got your questions as well. I'll over on Patreon. I will answer them when I get to them a bit later, saying congratulations on 140,000 subscribers. Yes, for those who care about these things, I hit 140,000 subscribers. I think it was yesterday, the day before, perhaps. Which is great. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you are one of those 140,000 subscribers, thank you. It's very kind, and I hope that I can carry on growing the channel and providing even more content as we go. But anyway, Maura carries on saying, thank you so much for the fabulous stories and content on both channels. I love and appreciate all you're doing to keep us entertained during this time. And you also sent a super sticker. Thank you, Maura. You know how much I appreciate your support and care. And Layla Azmi Gushi saying, thank you for your work. I look forward to these Thursday live streams. Thank you. And also Didelphi Morphia saying, love your live streams, Robert. Today was stressful, and I've been looking forward to this one as a respite. Thank you. Well, as I say, if I can offer some sort of respite, then it will make me very happy. Sam Kluntz II, thank you for the super chat, saying, curious to know your story with A Song of Ice and Fire. When did you start reading? How have your thoughts on the series and theories changed over the years? Thanks for your great work. Well, thank you very much. In terms of my story with this, I had been recommended these books, as is often the case with people. I love fantasy. Lord of the Rings, I'm a huge fan of, as well as many other things. And people have been recommending the series to me for quite a while. But I tended and still tend to try and wait until a series is finished and then read all the way through. So I was sort of holding off on it. Then came the show. I saw season 1 of the show and loved it and thought, okay, now I've got to read these books. Binge read the books between seasons 1 and 2, and it went on from there. So that's my sort of history in terms of it, which incidentally makes it a bit weird when I'm reading the books, because some of the books I met those characters first on the show, and so I'm imagining them and I'm hearing them from the show. But some of them, and those are like the season 1 characters. The characters who are introduced season 2 onwards, I often have my book experience of them first, and so I experience them in book form. If you're a book reader, you'll know what I mean by the difference between the character in my head and the character on the show. So there are some characters like Tyrion, the Starks, are very much shaped by the show, but the rest of them in my mind and my heart are very much shaped by my imagination as I was reading through the books. In terms of how my thoughts and theories have developed, I think probably the best way to do that is to go back and have a look at some of my earlier theories. I've been doing this channel for about 3 years now. Before I started it, I enjoyed reading it and I enjoyed getting into it and theorizing, but not quite to the same extent I obviously have done while I've been doing this channel. In terms of how my theories have shifted, I think it's been a lot more at a high level, a lot more focus on the structure and the plotting and the characterization. That is where I come from, rather than just trying to come out with theories. Trying to understand how this all fits into the whole has been probably my biggest shift. I'm very much a plot and character kind of person, rather than sort of a more sort of theoretical and symbolism kind of guy. I think that's fantastic, and I love it when I can talk to people about that kind of stuff. But my drive is the characters and the plot. So I hope that one sort of explained where I'm coming from a little bit. And thank you to everyone who's saying congrats on 140k. I really do appreciate that. Stephen Dillon, thank you for the super chat, saying, do you think that Jaime will eventually go back to Cersei? I thought it was unbelievable in the show. Jaime's hatred for her seems stronger in the books. Yeah, I will definitely be covering this all the way through, because this kind of link with Cersei is incredibly strong. So what I'll sort of say to introduce the topic, and then we'll sort of pick up on it as we go through. Jaime's link to Cersei is exceptionally strong. They both say we came into the world together, we will depart it together. They think in the same kind of ways. They obviously share a huge bond on many levels. And yes, in the books, they are sort of rent apart. But I do think that bond will carry on all the way through. And what Jaime is not, again, we'll cover this a bit later as well, is not, in my view, on a pure redemption arc where he starts off as a bad person, ends up as a good person. That's not where he's going. He is always going to be in this kind of tortured middle ground, focused a lot around this idea of keeping and breaking oaths. And where he ends up is not going to be as clean-cut a place as if he were on this pure redemption arc. I think he will end up a better person, but we shouldn't pretend that he started off as a terrible person. Yes, there were many bad parts to him, but his crowning glory as a character is when he prevented tens, hundreds of thousands of people being killed by killing the Mad King. That is the thing that everybody vilifies him for, but also is probably his most moral act so far. So what I would say is that will he go back to Cersei? I think that the bond will stay there all the way through, and I'll pick up on the details of what I mean on that as we get to it. I think so. Alejandro Martinez, thank you so much for super chat. I didn't see a question attached to that one. If there is one, I will have a look for it in the chat as it's going through. But let's start with this idea or pick up on where Jaime is in the story. Casey of House Lawbridge says, if Brienne takes Jaime to Lady Stoneheart, how do you think the encounter will work out? I think this is one of the big imponderables. I am going to do a video on this one so that I can dig into it in real detail. But the fact is we don't know exactly. All we can work out is what the characters' different motivations on this are. And Lady Stoneheart is after revenge, yes, but she's also after the safety of her children. Now, I think what Jaime can do is probably reassure her a little bit on where Sansa probably is and all the rest of it. Yeah, they don't know that she's gone off to with Littlefinger to the Vale, but I think that he can certainly say, I swore a vow to be protecting your children, and I sort of semi-passed this on to Brienne as well, and it's a matter of whether she believes him. And I think this isn't going to be the end for Jaime. I think that's pretty clear. I think that she will probably ask him to prove himself in some way. And I think that the upshot of it is that he will escape in somehow. Now, we've got this idea that she released him before. So this is basically I think, going to work as some kind of an echo back or a call back to what happened when Jaime was released by Catelyn. And I do wonder whether what happened before was she released him to take Brienne with her, and maybe Brienne this time is going to be the one who releases him. So that's about as far as I think we're going to go. I think that she is going to carry on her revenge mission. I think that she will hold him prisoner to start with, and in some way need some proof that he is actually going to try and stick by his vow. Cat May, thank you so much for the super chat, saying George R. R. Martin has all but confirmed that Brienne is Dunk's descendant and is using his coat of arms. Wouldn't Jaime recognize it? He is well versed in the White Book, and will they be able to connect the dots? Well, that's a really good question, because as I said earlier, where Brienne finds Jaime is at Pennytree, and Pennytree is where Sir Arlen of Pennytree was the knight that Dunk was following around, squiring to first, and who Dunk claimed knighted him. So there's an immediate link across there, and yes, she almost certainly is Dunk's descendant. Will they be able to join up the dots? I think he would definitely be able to recognize the sigil, and he will wonder where that is from, but I don't think that necessarily means that anyone's going to go, hang on a moment, you're the descendant of Sir Duncan the Tall, this makes you amazing. I don't think that level is going to happen. I think it's going to be left for the reader to be drawing a few of these lines between the different things. The fact that it's a Pennytree, I think, is not coincidental. I think that the fact that this is where the two of them meet up is a deliberate point that George R. R. Martin is trying to make to bring us back to the Duncan Egg stories. Okay, so we've got now questions from Brian Lewandowski saying, do you think Jaime will kill Stoneheart? No, I don't think he will. I think that he will, if anything, feel sorry for her and actually see, I mean, he'll probably be quite scared is probably the wrong word, but she is quite an ominous and scary figure. But in terms of her need for revenge, I think he will understand that. And I think that the point is that he is not the person who has personally wrought all of this. He can, and I don't think that he has a personal grudge against her. I think she has got a greater role to play going forward. George R. R. Martin did say that she was the character he was most disappointed didn't make it onto the show, which seems to imply that she has a role going forward, not necessarily central, but important to the plot of the books. And I think that that means that she will definitely survive for a little bit longer than just Jaime turns up and kills her. Connor Joyce saying, hi, Robert, first time catching a live chat. Welcome. If this is your first time, it's fantastic to have you. It is a different experience watching them live compared to watching them back later. Get a chance to sort of join in with the chat and ask a few questions. So fantastic. I hope you're enjoying it. Do you think in the books that Jaime will abandon Cersei to fight the others? I'm not sure whether abandon is quite the right word here, because the way that the show basically had it was that Jaime saw that the others are real and the threat is real and all the rest of it, and he saw that Cersei had promised to support and then didn't, and Jaime felt honor bound to go off and help out. That's not what's going to happen in the books. Cersei, I think, almost certainly is going to head off over to Casterly Rock. I think she's going to join up with Euron. I think that the people or the person in charge of King's Landing at around that time will be Fegon. Aegon, I think he's going to capture King's Landing relatively early in the Winds of Winter. That means that when Dany arrives and that whole initial confrontation of Dany trying to take the Iron Throne, oh no, there's somebody already there, that is not going to be with Cersei. Therefore, this whole negotiation thing will never happen. In fact, the whole trip to the north to get proof and bring back a White is also not going to happen. So it's not going to be the same. What may well be the case is that Brienne does bring him north. That may well be the truth of it. I think Jaime will at some point come back to Cersei and see what she has become, and I suspect he will see her with Euron, and I suspect he will not like what he sees and will head off, but not necessarily because he immediately sees this threat at the time. I think he will probably be caught up in it and then end up north in the wall. So it's not going to be quite as clear cut. Stacey Burke, thank you for the super chat. Didn't see a question attached to that one. I'm just having a very quick look to see if I can see a question under that. I can't see one. Okay, well, thank you for the super chat, and we will come back to that if it appears one of my moderators will pick it up, I'm sure. So a couple of questions on Bran and Jaime. So Peter Pebble, this is from Patreon, saying, Peter Pebble saying, do you see Jaime on a redemption arc? If Bran and Jaime meet again, do you think that something like in the show will happen, i.e. Bran forgiving him for throwing him out of the window? And Lawnduck20 says, hi, Robert. I'm thrilled to be a new member of the Deep Geek community. Welcome. Yeah, I saw you joined up on Patreon just a couple of days ago. Fantastic to have you on board. Thank you so much. My question is, will Bran ever meet the Kingslayer, the man who crippled him? If so, what do you think will happen there? And if when this happens, will it be in the Winds of Winter or Dream of Spring? Well, in terms of timing, I don't think Jaime's going to get all the way up to Winterfell. In fact, I don't think Bran is going to get to Winterfell until, at the very earliest, the end of the Winds of Winter, and probably we're into A Dream of Spring. So I think that's the kind of the time scale that we're looking. Will Bran and Jaime meet up? I think it's entirely likely. I think that where we're going to be at with that is a very similar thing, in that it's not Bran meeting Jaime and forgiving him. I think he may say it because Jaime may feel that he needs it, but by this point, Bran is going to be largely subsumed within the Weirwood network. So this is actually Bran objectively trying to achieve what the Weirwood Network wants him to do at the time. So it's not a matter of a personal thing. It's not a matter of working out, saying him personally saying, actually, you know what, I forgive you. I understand what you were at the time. It's actually, what is it that the Weirwood Network, Bran, wants from Jaime right then? And on the show, it was that they wanted him to be in the fight, therefore, and obviously also heading down to King's Landing to do the things that he did in King's Landing. And so Bran forgiving him actually allowed him to play his role. So I think that's what we're going to see. I don't think it's going to be a matter of forgiveness. It may come across as that to Jaime, but as far as Bran is concerned, it's actually going to be a lot more pragmatic, trying to get the ends, what the Weirwood Network is wanting, and how does it want to manipulate Jaime through their interaction. Question from, not Higa Herga. Hi there, Higa Herga, my favourite name to say. No questions, comments, or snarky remarks tonight. Keep up the excellent work as always. Thank you so much. That's very kind. I think we didn't get a question from that previous super chat, so I've not seen one. So I will move on to question from Diego Godoy saying, "Hi Robert, I'm absolutely loving your Secrets of series." Good. Well, I'm really pleased about that. For those who don't know, that's a series of videos I've started relatively recently. I think I've done 5 of them. They're roughly hour-long chats between me and another content creator about some of the most mysterious places in the world of Ice and Fire. So the most recent one I did, which released just yesterday, I was talking to This Grey Area, and we were looking at the House of the Undying. We went through, in particular, Dany's visions there, which prompted me to do it. I'm going to do a video on that because I want to set out my thoughts in full after that conversation about what I think all of that meant. But if you're interested in that, I think we agreed on quite a lot there, actually, then do go and check that one out. Coming up next, incidentally, is Secrets of the Red Keep with Aziz from History of Westeros. So if you're an Aziz fan, History of Westeros fan, or if you're just interested in the secrets of the Red Keep, and there are a lot, all of those secret tunnels, we've talked about some of them already, what that might mean for the plot, then that should be up next Wednesday. And then I'll have a few more after that. What I did was I asked my patrons to one of the patron levels at $10, then you get a chance every now and then to tell me what it is you want me to be making videos about. So I asked my patrons what subjects they want. They gave me a list of subjects they wanted those videos on, and so that's the list that I'm working my way down. So that's where we are at. Okay, let's go to... I was halfway through that question, Diego. Sorry, I got slightly sidetracked there. Do you think Jaime will join the Starks in the fight against the others? Since the expedition beyond the wall to capture a White is unlikely to happen in the books, is it possible that Jaime will not have solid evidence of their existence? Thanks for all your great work. Yeah, so this is what I was saying. This is what I'm saying about Jaime. I don't think that the same evidence is going to be there. I don't think it's going to. They made it very simple. Lots of things on the show, sometimes for good reasons, sometimes not. They made things very simple and straightforward, so we understood. Here's incontrovertible evidence that this is a real threat. Therefore, people have to decide what they're going to do about that threat. It's not going to be that clear cut in the books. George R. R. Martin doesn't do that clear cut. We're going to see different perspectives. We're going to see people doubting what they've been told. We're going to get rumors. Jaime has already, in his last chapter, I think, maybe even the last but one, he's experiencing snow in the Riverlands, and he's going, oh, winter is coming. And so he's already starting to see things shifting and changing. So I think he's going to hear rumors, and I think it's going to have to be somebody that he personally trusts, like Brienne, that will tempt him all the way up to the north. And I think it will also be a matter of not just being a pull, but also a push when he sees what's going on with Cersei. I think that's the way that it's going to be going. Ellen, thank you for the super chat, saying, do you think Jaime's dream was given to him by Bloodraven, or was this just something he dreamed on his own? His head was on a stump of a weirwood tree, correct? Yeah. So there's a couple of dreams. I will come to them very soon. I've got a couple of questions from my patrons, so I'll wrap up some of this into that. But in terms of his head on the stump of a weirwood tree, yeah, so he had two dreams. One of them was a very long, quite complicated one where he's sort of underneath Casterly Rock and he sees lots of visions of lots of different people, and Brienne's there and his father's there and the old Kingsguard are there and lots of stuff's going on. That was while he was sleeping with his head on a weirwood tree stump. That one quite possibly could have been planted by Bloodraven. The other one we're not told. It's at Raventree Hall, which is a very old godsy kind of place, and we read immediately when he's thinking about the Godswood. So there's lots of potential, but that is a lot more about a personal thing about who he is and his personal identity, and is actually a whole lot less playing into this idea, which the first one is, of this honor and keeping oaths and all the rest of it. But I will unpack all of that in a little bit. In answer to your question, it's possible Bloodraven did. I know I'm always this kind of like, if in doubt, blame Bloodraven. I think you have to try and work out what Bloodraven may want from that. If we sort of try and tease it all the way back, if we accept, as I accepted a little bit ago, that when Jaime meets Bran, then Bran, as the Weirwood Network, may be wanting to guide him on a path because he's got a specific role to play in the future, then it's entirely possible that if you wind it back, that this is actually trying to start Jaime on that path, that which will lead him up to Bran, which will lead him to all these things, which will end up with him doing this role that he has to do at the end, which, spoiler alert, I think is probably killing Cersei. So yes, I think it's entirely possible, but it's one of those things where I don't think we will have the full. I don't think we're ever going to get a signed statement from Bloodraven saying, "Yep, that one was me." It's entirely possible that it was. It would fit in, I think, also with what Bloodraven, the Weirwood Network, are wanting. Kelso Sunshine saying, Robert, who do you think the mother in his dream vision was supposed to be? His mother, the mother, Quaithe? That's the other vision. I will come on to that in more detail. But yes, I think that was his mother. I think that was the clear implication. Anime lover Nicole from Patreon saying, do you see Jaime and Brienne happening in the books? I do, but not like in the TV show, not like the few nights in, and then I'm running back to my sister lover. So it won't happen like that. I mean, I think, to be fair to the show, they didn't explain it, but it's quite clear from travel times that actually it wasn't just a one-night stand. This did last 6 weeks, a couple of months. They set up house together. This wasn't just a very quick fling. This was potentially the start of something incredibly meaningful. They didn't give us enough there, though, to be honest. We had the scene of them getting together, we had the scene of him talking to Tyrion about it, and then we had the scene of him leaving. So we never actually really saw them together, so to speak. So yeah, it didn't come across very well. I don't think George R. R. Martin's going to rush it like that. Will they get together like on the show? I think it's entirely possible. I quite liked this eve of the battle against the others idea, what they had, episode 2 of the season 8 of Game of Thrones, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, was an excellent episode. Whatever you think of the rest of the season, that was an excellent episode. And I think that it showed a huge amount of humanity about what would you do if you think this is potentially your last night alive. What do you do? And it's a theme which sort of runs across a huge amount of this kind of like pre-battles in lots of fantasy fiction as well as sort of historical fiction and the like. But what would you do? And it works well with Jaime, I think, when he's at this point when he probably feels he has broken free from Cersei, that that he can give into those feelings on that night, and that does make sense to me. So it won't happen exactly the same. It won't be as rushed as it happened there. But we must not, I think, give in to this idea that Jaime is on this perfect upward redemption arc leading to him being heroic and wonderful and marrying Brienne and settling down. It works better. We're always looking at this from Jaime's perspective, from Brienne's kind of arc, which makes sense from a sort of a Dunk's successor kind of feel of ending up as Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. It makes sense that she's not together with him. So, and she has had this string of people that she's cared about who have died. So, yeah, hers is a tragic story, but that does seem to be where she is going. So we shouldn't just think about their relationship in terms of what it means for Jaime's arc. We should also think about what it means for her arc, and also, incidentally, from Cersei's arc. She's obviously another player in here. It's very easy to get caught into this trap of just thinking about it from his perspective, but we do have to think about it particularly from Brienne's perspective as well. Hi, Manti Mukherjee, thank you so much with a super sticker of a hot dog. Thank you very much. Yeah, so just having a quick flick through the chat. Then I'll go pick up. I'm going to come very soon, actually. I'll get to the visions, and a lot of people are asking about the visions. Quite an interesting question here from Rose. I've over on Patreon. I've sort of cut it down a little bit, but there's some really interesting thinking in there. Thank you. Saying Jaime repeatedly reflects what Cersei is doing is stupid and adequately echoes his father in the retaking of Riverrun, only to be reminded by his aunt Jenna. Yeah, he meets his aunt Jenna, who's there, that Tyrion is Tywin's true son. As a reminder, Tyrion strangled his one true love because of Tywin. Had Shay not been discovered in that chamber, he would not have killed her. His thoughts are of Tisha and his future. I think Jaime will probably plan on or make an attempt on Cersei's life, and she may use the same I'm pregnant gambit they played in the show, but I think he will kill her for some similar betrayal. I think this is really interesting sort of thinking. And what I wanted to do, to sort of by way of responding to this, is just to try and unpick a little bit about what was going on in everyone's heads at that moment when Jaime released Tyrion, and for Tyrion afterwards. Jaime thought that this was the last time probably he would see his brother, and he wanted to unburden himself, which was an important moment for him in his role, because he'd always had this kind of yes, he'd always loved Tyrion, but he'd always had that element of dishonesty there, because there was something that he'd been trying to hide and protect him from the truth. And now he's in a place where he's actually wanting to embrace the truth of what's there. That was an important moment for him. Tyrion, the reason that the thing that sort of prompts him to go up to his father is thinking about Tisha, which Jaime has pushed him into, and he's angry, and that is what pushes him up. And then he sees Shay, and he's thinking about the women that he's lost, and he's thinking about a woman who here he thinks has betrayed him. That's what brings his anger out there. And then obviously you get this with Tywin. He says there's an echo across to what Jenna, his aunt Jenna, was saying, but Tywin says, "You're no son of mine." What all of this amounts to is the fact that Jaime and Tyrion have this kind of symbiosis relationship in their doomed love for someone, in that what we've had here is that Tyrion killed his ex-lover and his father because of Jaime's influence. And I wonder whether at the end of the story we are going to see Jaime killing Cersei, his at that time ex-lover, because of Tyrion's influence. I think we might see this kind of balance. It was on the show, as always on the show, particularly when we get to season 8, we shouldn't take the details of it too seriously. But the fact that Tyrion got Jaime out of prison, he helped him escape, and then Jaime went and killed his ex-lover, echoes completely the way that Jaime had helped Tyrion out of prison, and then Tyrion went off and killed his ex-lover. That I think is very likely to happen in some kind of way. I don't know exactly which way, but that seems quite a likely echo that is being worked on here. So yeah, some really interesting thoughts, Rose. Thank you for that, for sort of highlighting the links there between Jaime and Tyrion. James Marsh, thank you so much for the super chat, coming from New Zealand, enjoying your series. Oh, well, good day. So good morning to you, at least. Could Sansa marry Fegon? Do you think, as head of the Lannister army, Jaime could not side with Cersei? Okay, so Jaime could theoretically side with Cersei, but I think that what's going through his mind at the moment is Cersei's betrayal of him, and his this is what Tyrion gave him, is these thoughts running through his head of all of these women, all these men that Cersei slept with, and then Brienne comes to him. And yes, he's the leader of the army, but is he really wanting to go back to Cersei? Cersei's given him a good reason to come back, and he is not coming back. His thought is not to go and rescue Cersei. His thought is to go and fulfill his oath with Brienne. That seems to be showing where his mind is at. In terms of the Sansa marrying Fegon, yeah, I mean, I don't think so, is the short answer. I mean, I was sort of sighing simply because I was trying to work out how we could get from one thing to the other. I think that Littlefinger has got other plans for her, because basically at the moment Littlefinger is controlling her fate while they are in the Vale, particularly. He's already set her up to marry Harry Harding. I don't think that will happen. Or at least it may happen and then end quite quickly. But Littlefinger, I think, in his creepy way, wants to marry Sansa because if he can't have the mother, he'll have the daughter. Creepy. So this is where I think that is, and I think it is going. So I think Sansa will head up north to Winterfell. It would make a politically advantageous marriage for Fegon. Yes, there's very little doubt about that. But I don't think that is what's going to happen. I think while Sansa is in Littlefinger's care, then I don't think he's going to allow that to happen. And once she's out of his care, then I think that she will be wanting to make her own decisions on these things and not marry random people that she's being told is a politically advantageous thing for her to do. Okay, so questions from Henning J, saying, after the siege of Riverrun, Jaime is disappointed that the Blackfish, this is Brynden Tully, escaped. Do you think these characters will somehow meet again? Jaime seemed to be eager to earn some personal respect from an acknowledged veteran like Brynden Tully. That's why I'm asking. I hope Blackfish still has some role to play. So, for those who are unaware, the Blackfish is the character. We'll remember him from the show. He was in control of Riverrun, and he was allowed to escape by Edmure Tully. Now, the question is, where has Blackfish gone? And I think the only real clues that we have are what we know of his motivations. He was primarily a Tully loyalist, and that is, and then sort of as secondarily to that, because they were linked in with the Starks, then it was also quite, he was part of Team Stark when Robb was leading his army. So what's he going to do? Well, I think that he will probably want to try and save the Tullys in some way. He's not got the forces to try and take back the Riverrun yet, so I think that he will try and save the Tullys. Edmure is being sent off west to Casterly Rock, so I think that there's a reasonable chance that either the Blackfish will try and rescue Edmure Tully, or he's going to head off and try and find Sansa. I think those are the two most likely places that he will be going. Will he meet up again with Jaime? It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible he might meet up with him in the War for the Dawn, sort of slightly further north and all the rest of it. I think that's possible. I wonder whether they might actually end up fighting alongside one another. You're right that Jaime he wanted to get the respect from Blackfish, and Blackfish was like, when he was offered a fight, and Blackfish was like, I can't, it's not worth my time. He was very disdainful of Jaime Lannister. So I think, yes, they probably will have some kind of meeting again, but I think it's going to be when they're alongside one another rather than against one another. Stephen Dillon, thank you for the super chat, saying, are you doing a Dawn live chat with Ariane? Yeah, I could do, actually. Yeah, I think I did a Dawn live stream a few months ago, but I'm not sure whether it's specifically about this. So, yeah, I will have a think about that. Maybe there's probably one or two more in this series. Then we've got, so Sam Clance II saying, can you talk a bit more about Jaime's role in Tyrion's escape? Like, how much did he have to do with Jaime and and how often were Jaime and Varys working together? And how do you see Casterly Rock in the Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring? Who's running it and who will be its lord? Okay, so quite a few questions there. I've covered off a reasonable amount of that first bit about Tyrion's escape. I think the key thing is that this was Jaime's instigation, and Varys was the person who provided the means. That's the point there. They're not sort of best buddies. They're not always working together or anything like that. This was just Jaime wanted to get Tyrion out, and he knew the person who could do it was Varys, and so that's what happened. In terms of Casterly Rock, yes, I think it will appear. In fact, I think George R. R. Martin has basically said it's going to appear. The way I see it appearing is probably through Cersei. As I said, Fegon, with this huge invasion, has arrived down in Stormlands. He's taken Storm's End. The next stop of him has to be King's Landing. And with Varys in the Red Keep sowing signs of discord, and actually surprisingly few soldiers left in there, then I think it's going to be an easy victory for Fegon coming in. And I think Cersei will have to escape. Where's the only logical place for her to escape? Well, it's Casterly Rock. So I think that is how we're going to see Casterly Rock reappearing. And I think that is probably where Jaime and Cersei will reunite, if only briefly. In terms of who's running it, well, it's on the show, they cut down the amount of Lannisters hugely. There's a big and complicated Lannister family tree. There's a guy called Damian Lannister, who I think is currently Castellan there. He's not a major character. At the moment Cersei arrives back, then she's going to be in control. So I think that isn't really the real sort of crux of it. There are lots of minor Lannisters who could pick up on things if needed. Okay, so got questions now about the visions. Now, I sort of talked briefly about these before, so let's try and dig into these. So Caroline Schween says, Jaime's vision of his mother has always really intrigued me. She talked about Tywin and his dream of his children becoming a great knight and a queen. What does it mean? Will she have a presence in the book going forward? Will Jaime be guided by her somehow? Nicola Juracan says, first of all, thank you for your content. You're very welcome. I have a question regarding the second dream, the one with the woman. Is it a vision or a dream? He has only one hand, while George R.R. Martin established that in Jaime's dreams he is still two-handed. What do you take from the conversation there? Maura Lee saying Jaime had dreams in the books. Was it just a fever dream? Did Bloodraven have a hand in Jaime's dreams? What were they trying to tell Jaime, or were they just fever dreams? Okay, so let's pick up on this second dream first. That he's so what we've got is, and I think actually I've got it so that I can quote from here, or I tried my best to. Okay, so I've got some of it. I will quote to you. So he sees this character in a sept. He doesn't know who she is, and she says, I am not your sister, because he wonders whether it's Cersei. And then there's all these kind of hints that this is his mother. And he says, this is a dream, is it? She smiled sadly. Count your hands, child. One hand clasped tight around the sword hilt, only one. And she then says, and he says, in my dreams, I always have two hands. And then she says, we all dream of things we cannot have. Tywin dreamed that his son would be a great knight, that his daughter would be a queen. He dreamed that they would be so strong and brave and beautiful that no one would ever laugh at them. I am a knight, he told her, and Cersei is a queen. A tear rolled down her cheek. The woman raised her hood again and turned her back on him. Jaime called after her, but she was already moving away. So the crux of this dream here is that this woman, his mother, says, okay, so we always, when we're dreaming, we dream of things that we cannot have. And then she talks about what Tywin, her husband, Jaime's father, what he wanted. And he wanted his children to be a great knight and a queen, and that they would be strong and brave and beautiful, and no one would ever laugh at them. And Jaime basically says, yeah, we are those things. And then she's sad. She turns her back on him. I think that there are two broad possibilities of what's going on here. It is a really interesting dream. The first one is one that I've seen some speculation about, which is that the reason why the woman is sad is because she knows that they're not actually Tywin's children. Jaime says, we are those things that Tywin wanted, but she's sad because they are not actually his children. They are actually the Mad King Aerys II's children. We know that the whole backstory there. I think that's the first possibility. I think the second possibility is the more likely one, though, which is simply that you get her saying what Tywin wanted was all of these noble attributes in his children. He wanted them to be good and loved and all the rest of it. And he wanted people not to laugh at them. And Jaime misses all of that bit. And he says, I am a knight, she is a queen. That's it, right? And his mother thinks, you've missed the point here. The point is not what jobs you hold. The point is what kinds of people you are, and whether people laugh at you. And people do laugh at them. We get, Cersei was mocked going through the streets on her walk of shame. And Jaime spent all his life, yes, people respected him close up, but then they were mocking him, calling him Breaker, a Kingslayer, and all the rest of it. So, and when the rumors came out about both of them, again, people were making up songs about them and laughing at them. So actually, although Jaime says, I am those things that my father wanted, as is Cersei, they're not. They're just they've missed the point. He's missed the point. They may have attained those positions, but they are not the people that Tywin was wanting. So that's my take on that first visual. It was actually, I think, the second vision. Just very quickly nipping into the chat, Vampirist99, thank you for the super chat, saying, you just said that you think the Blackfish might go and try free Edmure. You think he'll try and free Jeyne Westerling? Yeah, so there's a lot of people heading off. So we've got Jeyne Westerling as well. This was Robb Stark's wife. She's also being carted off to the Westerlands. Now, we've got this hint from George R.R. Martin that the first chapter, the prologue of The Winds of Winter will feature her. I think the more I think about this, the more likely I think it is that this means that this wagon train or whatever it is, which is probably going to have both of them in as they're heading roughly in the same direction, or maybe it's just going to be her in it. But I think that we will see an attempt to rescue her. Now, there are, I think, 3 possible people who could do it. First is the Blackfish, as we've been talking about. I think that's entirely possible. The second is the super pack of wolves, which we know are there, and we know that they've been attacking Frey things and all the rest of it. They are effectively acting as this kind of guerrilla warfare in the Riverlands, led by Nymeria. And the third is Lady Stoneheart. Now, it could be any of them. I've already talked about the Blackfish one. Just to briefly speculate on how this could be Lady Stoneheart, I wonder what happens if, when Jaime arrives there and he says, okay, so how can I prove my loyalty, the fact that I'm changed and all the rest of it? Well, actually, you know what? Edmure, your brother, he's on this wagon train going over there. Jeyne Westerling, the bride, the wife of your son, she's on this wagon train over there. This is your opportunity. I will tell you exactly how to get them back, how to rescue them. That could very easily be a way for Jaime to work his way into, if not the affections of Lady Stoneheart, then to perhaps show the genuine nature of his slow change from being just a Lannister loyalist to being somebody who's a lot more sort of nuanced in his ideas. So that's where I would put all of that. I think that we are going to see an escape attempt on Jeyne Westerling. The question is just who. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the questions in the chat. So Alan just saying, when did you film yesterday's video with grey area? I see your pictures back on the wall. Yeah, I put the picture back up quite recently, so I don't know whether it'll be there in the background for when I got the Izzy's one in there. I just had a problem hooking it back up, and it took me a little while to get a little thing to hook it back up with. So that's all that was going on there. Yes, the picture is now back up on the wall. Brennan Barnes just picking up again on this, talking about these divisions, saying, what is your interpretation of their meaning? They confound me as they almost seem to oppose each other. In Storm of Swords, he's on a weirwood stump, which has to be significant, and from the moment he wakes up from that dream, he's almost a new man, striving to be better than he was, endeavours to truly be a knight. In the Clash of Kings dream, his mother tells him that people dream of what they can't have and turns her back on him, but not before pointing out that he only has one hand, whereas in his dreams, Jaime is always whole. Please forgive the pun, but I am stumped. I will not forgive that pun. It's too good. Okay, so I don't think they're opposites. So I've already talked about the dream with his mother. I think that this is it is part of the showing him that he's been missing the point about roles and jobs and positions and all the rest of it. It's about character of the person. The other vision, now I don't have a quote, it's very long, but it's a vision that goes on for several pages. But basically, so he's lying down, head resting on a weirwood stump. Then he appears in this vision in Casterly Rock, and he says, great. Then these mysterious men sort of take him down deep into the depths of Casterly Rock. And then Cersei and Tywin, his sister and his father, appear and say, and he says, why, father, have you taken me down to this place? And she says, this is your place, brother. This is your darkness. So this is very clear that this is about him, and it's about his darkness, it's his struggles. And his struggles seem to be very connected up with oaths and all the rest of it. So then Tywin, his father, says, I gave you a sword. This sword is obviously Oathkeeper. Now, what happens then is Brienne arrives, and she says, I promised to protect you. I made an oath. Immediately, we're back into this oath business. He frees her with his sword. They both get these kind of magical blue glowing swords. He asks what this is about, and Cersei says, as long as they're a light, then you are. If they go out, then you die. Then he gets this vision of all of his old pals in the Kingsguard suddenly appear, and they start talking to him about the oaths that he broke. And Rhaegar says, when he killed the king, Rhaegar says, what about I left my children there in your care? They died. And he's just going through this roiling darkness of all of this pain of broken promises, and was he doing the right thing, and which vows does he need to keep? Brienne, there's this fantastic bit where Brienne's talking about what is down there. Are there bears down here? Which will be important in just one moment. And then the light on his sword goes out, but Brienne stays alight. He wakes up, and he immediately then gets this idea he has to go back and save Brienne. This is the moment when he goes back and finds her being attacked by the bear in the pit, and he rescues her. And it's a sort of the start of this this movement of his character from where he was a very simple, straightforward, very privileged person to somebody who's a lot more nuanced and angsting about oaths and truths and all the rest of it. And obviously it's the moment that allows him and Brienne to continue their sort of connection. So what does it all mean? Well, basically it's there's a lot, so I'm not going to get into all of it, but the fact that his sword goes out before Brienne's, I think, is a subtle hint that he's going to die before Brienne. Brienne's light stays on. She will probably survive. You probably won't. The fact that we get this idea of there might be bears there, that's linking across to what happens later. The fact that he's being confronted by all of these oaths and conflicting morals and vows is, I think, showing where his character arc is going to carry on going all the way through this. He's going to have to keep on making these hard decisions about which vows he has to be keeping. But fundamentally, where he starts off at that point is away from just this, I'm just going to follow my simple, straightforward code of guidance, to a point where he's now having to wrestle with all of these different issues. And that is what is carrying Jaime all the way through this, is this wrestling with all of these competing pressures different moralities, different oaths, different vows, different allegiances. Because when you think about it, he's got one to Cersei. He'll have a bond with Tyrion, who's going to presumably be on Team Daenerys. He's obviously he's got an oath to be finding and protecting the Stark children. He's got this connection with Brienne. He's got all these different competing moralities and vows and feelings and all the rest of it, which are going on, and that is going to be carrying him through the plot from then on. So this is opening up this and the fact that he is an anguished soul. And as Cersei says at the beginning of this is his darkness. This is what is his darkness, which is going to follow him through as a character through the rest of this story. Kraken Tacos, one of my excellent moderators. So thank you so much, my moderators. I do have the best moderators out there who do some fantastic work. So thank you. And the super chat saying, who has the better sense of humor, Jaime or Tyrion? Both have the ability to make jokes in the face of great adversity. Well, you know, I'm a Tyrion fan. I think Tyrion's a cleverer and tends to be a lot more self-deprecatory in a way that appeals to my British sensibilities, I have to say. So I think that if I had to pick between the two, I would go with Tyrion. But they're both really interesting characters and really fun reads as well. Robin Blackwood, how do you think Jaime will react to, thank you for the super chat, how do you think Jaime will react to Fegon marching on the capital? He may not be happy with Cersei, but would he leave her and Tommen in danger? So we have to understand the speed at which news travels in Westeros. It's not immediate. Unless you're there getting ravens coming at you all the time, it's not immediate. And this has knock-on implications for the actions of characters. Jaime, as far as we're aware, is still blissfully unaware of the fact that there's an invasion sort of starting to happen down somewhere near King's Landing. So he may well not hear, because he's obviously now heading off to into the woods to find Lady Stoneheart. He may well not hear that Fegon is invading until he's already taken King's Landing. And that's the point at which he may well try and find Cersei after all of that. Once he's heard about all the things that have gone on, then maybe he will head to try and find her. Being forced out of the capital, Tommen's death, I think Tommen probably will die in King's Landing. I think these kind of things will lead him back to her, albeit probably only briefly. So I don't think it's going to be the invasion per se. I think it's going to be the after effects of that, and the Tommen's death, I think, will probably bring them back a little bit closer. Maura Lee, thank you so much for the super chat. So saying thanks for being you. Thank you, Maura. I hugely appreciate it. I've done a couple of your questions. I think I've got one more that I'm going to pick up on as well a little bit later. But thank you so much. Let's go to Chase over on Patreon, who says, hi, Robert, been loving the Secret series. Would love to see one with Secrets of the Citadel. How do you think Jaime's reunion with Tyrion will go, especially as their last encounter was much more angry than in the show? First on Secrets of the Citadel, I've seen a couple of people asking about Gemma in the chat. Gemma is, well, as I'm sure you know, if you're fans of her work, I'm sure you'll be aware, she's taken a bit of a break from doing Secrets of the Citadel for a while. You can catch it if you go to Geek Chat 1, which is a channel run by the excellent JR. She is on there most, if not all weeks, doing Geek End News, which is a roundup of all the different news which is going on in sort of the wider geekosphere. So do go and check that out. I'm sure one of the moderators will put a link to that in the chat. So she's well, and I know she very much appreciates people's concern, all the rest of it. If I can possibly get her on to do one of the Secrets ones, then I will. Yeah, if you're missing your Gemma fix, do go and check her out on the Geek End News. Laminia M, thank you so much. I'm just saying, thank you so much for your wonderful work. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Guy Smulders saying the other Kingsguard knew about Rhaegar and Lyanna. Is there a chance Jaime knows too and will reveal something about Jon's parentage? Well, I think it's slightly more complex than that. So, the camp or the court at the beginning of Robert's Rebellion was sort of split into two. We have the Rhaegar loyalists and we have the Aerys loyalists. Now, around Rhaegar, there were 3 members of the Kingsguard who were very clearly on his side. One of them, obviously, was Arthur Dayne. One of them was Lewin Martell, who was the uncle of Elia Martell, Rhaegar's wife. And the third one was Oswell Went. The Wents were the lords of Harrenhal. So those 3 were very much centered around Rhaegar. Jaime was actually quite a recent addition to the Kingsguard, so he hadn't really got time to sort of get in with all this court intrigue, but he missed out on Rhaegar. Rhaegar had effectively camped himself over on Dragonstone rather than being in King's Landing. So he wasn't in that group. Now, that being said, there was a general understanding, I suspect, among some people knowing where Rhaegar went. Gerald Hightower, another member of the Kingsguard, in fact, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, was asked to go and collect Rhaegar, and he seemed to have gone there direct. So some people did know where he was. Jaime, all this time, stayed in King's Landing, even when the other ones were either at the Tower of Joy or they headed up to fight in the Battle of the Trident. He stayed there in King's Landing. So he sort of missed out on a lot of this gossip, and certainly he wasn't at the Tower of Joy at the time of the birth of Jon, so he won't know that. Yes, he will know that Rhaegar went off with Lyanna. Everybody knew that. But he wouldn't have known that she was pregnant. He wouldn't have had any inside knowledge of that, I don't think. So there are other people who probably, I mean, he could have guessed, but there are other people who probably could also have guessed, people who are around people like Varys and Littlefinger. They probably have got as good a guess as anybody else. At which point, I'll just take a very brief moment just to let you know what's coming up on this channel over the next few weeks. As I say, I'm going to carry on with my Secrets series next week. Aziz from History of Westeros is on, talking about the Red Keep. I'm carrying on with my Lord of the Rings coverage as well. I've been doing some work. It's been fascinating looking at the War of the Ring. If you've read The Lord of the Rings, if you've watched the films, you will know the story we get is the story of the characters, but in the background to it, there's a war raging. There are battles happening, some of which we see on the screen, some of which are happening off screen. And so I'm just trying to pick out and break down what is the war as a whole going on. There are wars happening all across Middle-earth, and invasions of Lothlorien and things like that we hardly even hear about. So I'm going to do probably a 2-part series trying to map out what was actually happening in the sort of the strategy and the geopolitical stuff going on behind the main story of The Lord of the Rings. So that's what I'm doing over on there. I'm also carrying on my If in Doubt Blame Bloodraven series of videos back in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. The next one I'm going to do there is going to be about this period I was just talking about with Robert's Rebellion. What was Bloodraven up to during the immediate build-up to Robert's Rebellion? How was he influencing events? And I think we can very clearly see his hand and the hand of Howland Reed as his right-hand man, I think, in those events in the build-up to Robert's Rebellion and through the first period there as well. After that, I'm going to do one, which is a video I've been looking forward to doing for a long time. Bloodraven warging into animals. When and where and how is he doing it? We know that he can. Which animals? And I think that there's a few examples that lots of people within the community have picked out as being quite likely, and I think there's another couple that I want to pick up on as well. So that's a video I'm really looking forward to. Over on my second channel, if you don't know my second channel, The Well Told Tale, it's my audiobook channel. I narrate what I consider to be the finest science fiction and fantasy stories ever written. We've just finished The Invisible Man, so if you're waiting for that to finish, then they're all up there now. And just yesterday, I released a Philip K. Dick short story called The Skull, which, if you've never read it, and I know a lot of people haven't, is brilliant. Philip K. Dick is one of my favorite science fiction writers. He wrote the stories that led to films like Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report. His brain was amazing. And this, I think, for me, is his finest short story that hasn't been made into a film. So if you're interested in that, there's a link down there. And there's also a link down there to my Patreon page. Patrons, thank you. I genuinely can't do this without you. So thank you so much for your support. If you're interested in supporting the channel or getting access to some patron-only benefits, one of them, as you've seen on this live stream, is patrons get priority questions for live streams. But at different levels, you get other stuff as well. $5, you get access to all of the audio that I do for this channel. $10, you get both a thanks down in the description, and also you get a chance every now and then to tell me what things I should be covering in my videos, like I asked what I should be doing in my Secrets of series. And I've also got a $30 level if you're feeling particularly generous, and if you want a slightly more bespoke gift from me, then that's something we can discuss there as well. So if you're interested in that, there's a link down in the description. Thank you. Okay, so let's get back to some questions. I think I've got a couple of questions in the chat to get to. Where was it? So Iago Casabiel Gonzalez, probably completely mispronounced your name. I apologize. Do you think Jaime will wield Dawn, Blackfire, or Dark Sister? Thanks for the great live streams. Oh, good question. So Dawn is the ancestral sword of House Dane. Blackfire and Dark Sister are the ancestral swords of House Targaryen. Now, where are they? Well, I think the short answer is I don't think he's going to wield any of them, but I will give quick reasons for that. He has already got a Valyrian steel sword, so let's not. He doesn't need to suddenly get this new one. So Dawn is currently at Starfall with House Dane. I think that is going to come into action. I think that Gerald Dane is going to grab hold of that and declare himself the Sword of the Morning, or perhaps the Sword of the Evening, or something like that. I think he will come into King's Landing, and I think that he will eventually become a member of the Kingsguard for Fegon. That, I think, is how that enters the action. I think that it will, the fact that it's in King's Landing will probably be quite important, and I have a long and complicated reasoning that suggests that perhaps Jon Snow may wield that in the end. Blackfire is currently missing somewhere over in Essos. The House Blackfire had it. House Blackfire have died out in the male line, at least. I have a feeling that that is going to come back into play and be presented to Fegon as a symbol of his right to rule. And so he will have it. It will be in King's Landing. I think that it will be there for Targaryens to use. Dark Sister is up in probably in Bloodraven's cave. We know he took it up to the wall. We're pretty sure that he took it up to the cave north of the wall. I think it's incredibly likely that Mira will bring it down south. The question then is who wields it afterwards. The most likely person, I think, is Arya, if only because she is the Dark Sister. But I don't think that's going to be Jaime. So I think the short answer is I don't think he's going to wield any of them. So apologies if you were looking forward to that. But yeah, I think he will be wielding a Valyrian steel sword, but I don't think it's going to be any of those ones. So Robin Blackwood saying, sorry, this is only kind of linked to Jaime, but what do you think will happen to Widow's Wail in the future? It's a good question. So we're still in the Valyrian steel swords. So Widow's Wail is the one that Joffrey had, and he named it Widow's Wail, and it ended up with this then got sort of passed down to Tommen. Tommen, however, of course, is too young really to be wielding a sword. So I really like the idea that, as on the show, Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper come together. They're both forged from the great Stark sword Ice, and it was broken into two or reforged into two smaller swords. I really like the idea that the two of those swords will be taken north to Winterfell and used in the defense of Winterfell. And I love the idea that this might be Jaime and Brienne who wield them, the two of them. And this works for me on many levels because those are the two who have been protecting they haven't actually done a great job of it yet, to be honest, but they've been sent out basically to get and protect the Stark daughters, Arya and Sansa. They don't seem to need it huge amounts at the moment, but they are there, therefore protecting Winterfell. So I love this idea that they're going to go all the way up there. And I love the idea that it's going to be Jaime and Brienne who wield them. And a question from Vigstable saying, will be interesting in seeing how Jaime is punished for his known crimes. Stoneheart is one of the few people who know Jaime threw Bran out of the window. Well, how is he going to be punished for his crimes? I think the question is who will punish him. I think that his fate is to start getting the moral angst inside him that punishes himself for these crimes, and to be living his life to be trying to save the House Stark, who he did quite a lot to be damaging. So I think that is where we're gonna end up. I think will Lady Stoneheart kill him? As I say, I don't think she's going to kill him, but I think that her punishing him is entirely possible. It's then a matter for him to try and work out how he can prove his loyalty and all the rest of it. Jamie McKenna, thank you so much, saying just some love and appreciation. Hope Dan's paw is feeling better. I agree. Love Jaime and Brienne defending the Starks and Winterfell. Cheers. Well, cheers. Dan's paw is a lot better now. Thank you. This, for those who do not know, my dog is Dan. Dan the dog, and he got a scratch on his foot. Poor little guy. A week or so ago, and he's still limping a little bit, but he's a lot better now. He's not bleeding everywhere anymore, which is good. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. He's coming along fine, and he's nearly back to running at full speed, which for a greyhound is very important to him. So thank you. Question from Leaf Underhill. And this is when Jaime knighted Brienne. I thought it was just a show thing, but during Valar Rereadis, which is something History of Westeros are doing, rereading chapter by chapter all the way through the books in the light of the TV show. During that, we've all been noticing so much foreshadowing for it in A Storm of Swords. Most people seem most struck by the quote, "In this light, she could almost be a knight," from his dream. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that, but as I say, there was a lot going on in that dream. However, I was more impressed by the number of times before that when he referred to her as though she already were a knight, in his head or out loud, calling her sir, etc. The one that stood out most to me was when he said 300 dragons is a fair ransom for a knight. Did you ever think he might knight her before it happened on the show? What do you think now? And when would it happen relative to other forecasted events in his arc? Right, so did I think that he would knight her before I saw it on the show? I'm trying to think back whether I did particularly. I mean, I think I'm not going to pretend that I envisaged that exact thing. I'm not that great a seer. But her big ending up following Dunk's trajectory in becoming the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, I think I definitely felt that was most likely for her, and that implied that somebody somewhere along the line would have to knight her. I don't think that I specifically thought it was going to be Jaime, and I think that the fact that, I mean, in the books, it doesn't necessarily have to be her. It just felt so right, didn't it, on the show? Yeah, I think I was halfway there, is what I'm trying to say. What do I think now? Yeah, I still definitely think that she will be knighted. I think it is quite likely that it is going to be Jaime who does it. When will it happen? I think it does fit in with what I was saying with the sort of the pre-battle moment. What is it that you really want? And Jaime knows what Brienne really wants better than anyone else does. And so he can, in that moment, he can provide it. He can knight her. And I think that makes a huge amount of sense, sort of thematically, and also kind of just at a very guttural level, it works, I have to say. So that is my favorite time for it to happen. I think that when he thinks that actually I might as well, there's nothing to lose here, he's not going to worry about what other people think, that's when he might do it. Vampris99 saying, while I don't necessarily think it's likely, I have this headcanon that Jaime might kill Cersei with Widow's Wail. It would be thematically poetic. Yeah, it could be. I think wrapping hands around her pale white neck, choking her, I think that is how he will do it, rather than killing her, stabbing her with a sword. That's there. I agree. Yes, Widow's Wail. The name lends itself to so many different things. I think in terms of the names, one level of the names, which I think I've said before, but works and probably in a video rather than a live stream, but I think it works really well for me, is that you get the Stark sword is broken into two. It is broken into Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper, and these are both actually hints to what happened at the Tower of Joy. The Widow's Wail from Lyanna, and then Ned Stark, who obviously held ice, that was his sword. He was the Oathkeeper. He kept the promises he made to Lyanna, with, I think, one exception. But try and check out that video. Try and find that video if you're intrigued by that. I think there was one promise he didn't keep to her, that he made to her. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the... so Ellen saying, if you get a chance, I posted a question in yesterday's vid comment section, the House of the Undying. I'll try and go and have a look at that. I won't have a chance while I'm doing this live, I'm afraid, to go and check that one out. But thank you. I'll go and have a look at that a little bit later. Carl99, do you see Jaime's pursuit to relearn how to fight as having a payoff in later books? Yeah, so he does this definitely in the books. On the show, he's got Bronn there that he's fighting with. In the books, he gets I've forgotten his name now, the headsman. He brings him with him into the Riverlands, and they fight. Well, he's learning how to fight with his left hand. He finds it quite hard, obviously, but that's how he's doing on a daily basis for a long time. Will this pay off later in the books? In as much as he will be able to join the fight later on. I don't think, however, he's ever going to be a strong enough fighter for this to be a significant moment for him. The important point about him is the fact that he has lost his epic fighting ability, because he was a great fighter. And now he might be able to work his way up to being an okay fighter, but he's never going to be great again. And that's the main point that we've got from this. There's a couple of people saying the screen froze. I think it's still working for me, so just refresh it if it's frozen for you. Hopefully that will work. The question from Daniel saying, do you think that Jaime and Daenerys will ever come into contact with each other? One of my favorite scenes in the last 2 seasons is the Battle of the Gold Road. And I do not think it was a coincidence that Jaime, of all people, was the one whose perspective that we got when Dany burned people alive, considering his history with the Mad King. Do you see a scene like that happening in the books as well? Yeah, I would agree that that was deliberate, that he was the one who saw it, and also Tyrion did as well. Now, so Jaime, obviously, his history was to try and prevent killing of many people by burning, and then he sees on the show Dany killing huge amounts of people. I think that it's entirely possible that he might, but the storylines are not going to be as close, because the battles that Daenerys on the show was fighting against House Lannister, probably she's not going to be fighting those same battles in the same way, because she's not coming in and facing Cersei in King's Landing. She's going to be coming in and facing Fegon in King's Landing. And a lot of those battles that we saw, whereas they may happen in some shape or form in the books, they were actually about getting Dany's army down to a size where we could realistically imagine her not just winning a battle straight away against Cersei. Because she had a massive army that she brought with her, which included some groups of people who will probably be supporting Fegon in the books, but the showrunners wanted to just bring everybody together at the same time. And so they brought them all across, but then they had to kind of cut her army down to size a little bit. Hence a lot of the battles that we got, and a lot of the shooting down of random dragons and the rest of it. So that I don't think is going to happen exactly like that. And Jaime was probably in the Riverlands, then probably going to Cersei, and then heading up north after that. So meeting Daenerys will probably be slightly later on. He may see her and a dragon in battle, and it may well scare him, and it may well bring back memories of the Mad King. But I don't think that's. I mean, it wasn't on the show either an actually important thematic beat. It was just a hark back to an earlier bit of his story. Stephanie Spain saying, always looking forward to Thursdays. Thank you for the wonderful content. Thank you very much. That's very kind. Now, Haimanti Mukherjee over on Patreon says, hi, Robert. Do you think Jaime with and without Cersei are two different people. I don't actually. I think that this is one person, and whereas he might see himself as different people, or perhaps wanting to change, I think a lot of what we're going to see in his sort of character development is him actually trying to be one person, to hold all of these contradictions together in who he is. I think that is what we're going to see. I think that he will try and be a different person without Cersei, but I think that what he will come to realize is that he has got this bond with her, and it's not going anywhere. And I think that is kind of like always going to be bringing him back to a degree, and they are so alike. He has different bits to his character. She has different bits to her character, but there is a central core relationship there that I don't think they will be able to escape. And you also asked, or said, it's pretty clear that his grudge against Ned Stark is mainly because no one saw the humanity in him while he killed the Mad King. There would be no Robert, Ned, or whole of King's Landing if he hadn't been a Kingslayer. Couldn't Ned see that? As much as Ned is my favorite character, do you think George R.R. Martin is telling us through Ned that even virtue, when worn as pride, can make people blind? Yeah, I think that this is... and for those who don't know this bit of the background, after Jaime killed the king, he didn't really know what to do. He'd broken the vows that he held so highly. He'd saved tens of thousands of lives, and he wanted to just see who was going to come in and be the new king. And so he just sat down on the Iron Throne and waited. And Ned came in and he saw him, and he assumed that this was him, having killed the king, now trying to claim the throne for his own. And that's so Ned judged him ever since that moment. And then Jaime judged Ned because of that judgment. And that, in a way, was a point at which Jaime's character could have gone a number of different ways. If Ned had come in and taken a moment, taken a breath, and said, what's happened here? And Jaime had explained it all, and Ned would have gone, wow, you saved so many people, this is great. Then that would have led to a very different character than the one who was being called names, Oathbreaker, Kingslayer, and all the rest of it, and had to bury himself down inside that with this hard shell. The character development we've seen is him breaking down the layers of this hard shell and trying to get at who he is inside, or at least this is what Brienne is doing. And yeah, the fact that this is Ned who is the person who does this. Yes, there are a couple of Lannister soldiers as well, but Ned, this great character, noble and all the rest of it, coming to hasty judgments, that, I think, is George R.R. Martin trying to show us, don't just assume that these are all perfect characters, and even good characters can be can have bad sides. Amir Dubai saying, Robert, I'm not a patron, but maybe someone will re-ask, who do you think leaves the story dies first, Jaime, Brienne, or Lady Stoneheart? Yeah, I do prioritize my patrons' questions, but I completely understand that not everyone can be a patron, so that's why I try and get to as many questions from the chat as I can see as we're going through. It moves quite fast for me, so I can't pick up on all of them, I'm afraid. But just in terms of your question, who do you think leaves the story first, Jaime, Brienne, or Lady Stoneheart? I think Lady Stoneheart will, then Jaime, and I think Brienne will survive. That's my general take on that one. Think I am caught up. Okay, yeah, caught on comments in the chat. Now, anime lover Nicole saying, how do you see Jaime die? So this connects in with there. I think he will die by the Zombie Mountain or other Kingsguard killing him as he kills Cersei. And I'm going to tie this in, actually. Katie Smith also asked, I'm going to ask the obvious question, is Jaime the Valonqar? When do you think that prophecy will come to pass? So I don't think it's the obvious question. You were actually the only person who I was expecting quite a few people to be asking this. You were the only one, but I'm very happy to answer it. So yes, I think he is, simply because of the character arcs. The little brother thing, it sums up Cersei so well that she is convinced that it's Tyrion. But actually, if it ends up being Jaime, then that's quite ironic. So I think he will be the one to kill her. I think that he will strangle her. I think that this will be because he sees what she has become. And it will almost be a mercy killing, I suspect. Because the Cersei we saw on the show, yes, she was bad and evil and all the rest of it, but I don't think she's going to be a patch on what we see in the books, because I think if the Cersei we saw on the show was the result of her having a relationship of sorts with Euron, show Euron. Book Euron, if she has a relationship of sorts with him, is going to be an entirely different matter. Book Euron is insane. He is charismatic. He is egotistical. He wants to be a god. He wants to destroy the whole world. He sees visions of him on the Iron Throne with a pale lady with all sorts of gods dead and hung up around him. This is crazy stuff that's going on with Euron. So if she gets together with him, I think this is going to lead to some really quite sinister places. And the fact that this is a pale white throat, I think is perhaps a hint that she is going to head more towards the sort of the undead Knight's Queen kind of imagery that Euron gets a lot of the kind of the Knight's King kind of imagery. I think that is where we're going to see her go. And I think that Jaime will kill her in the end because he sees what she has become, and he sees the fact that he is personally never going to be, he wasn't there for her when she became that, and so he's going to hate himself for that, and also he is never going to be able to completely pull free from that, and he wants to set her free in some kind of way, and I think that he will kill her. So that's, I think, where that's going to happen. How will he die? I don't know. It could happen in a number of ways. I like this idea of the Zombie Mountain or another Kingsguard killing him as he kills Cersei. Yeah, that's a way he could go, definitely. I think that although we mocked it a lot, I think the idea that maybe he kills Cersei and then moments later he dies because he's got caught up in collapsing buildings because of stuff going on around him, that also kind of works for me. So I think the important point is that they will die at the same point in each other's arms. This is kind of reiterated by both of them. We came into the world together, we will leave the world together. I think when she dies, when he kills her, he will die almost immediately afterwards. Kevin Warner, thank you for the super chat, saying, will Brienne update Jaime's entry in the White Book? What will it say? Yeah, I had a question from Maura Lee, who actually asked the same question over on Patreon, saying, on the show, Brienne writes in the White Book about Jaime. In the books, what would you have liked for Brienne to say about Jaime that wasn't said on the show? So I had a very quick look at what she had written. She basically sort of updated it to what happened at the end, and then there was this sort of like, it's very factual. All the pages of it seem to be very factual, just like short, sharp sentences. When he said, yes, it says he wrote, faced the army of the dead and defended the castle against impossible odds until the defeat of the Night King, escaped imprisonment and rode south in an attempt to save the capital from destruction, died protecting his queen. So that's what she wrote after sort of like a whole series of bullet points, really saying the other things that he did. Now, I think she will probably do something along those lines. I think that she will update his entry. What, however, I would have liked in the show, and what I hope will happen in the books, is not so much that she accurately recounts the rest of his story, but the beginning bit of his entry, where it says he broke his oath and killed the king, but was pardoned for it, and was thereafter called Kingslayer. She updates that with the whole truth, because she knows the whole truth, because Jaime has told her, and not everyone does know that. And I think that this is going to be her final gift to him, that she will allow him to be remembered for his great heroic act, not just for being a Kingslayer. And I think that is what I think that, and what I hope that she will be putting into the White Book at the end of it all, to actually give him a proper, rounded historical entry, rather than just what looks like he might have been quite good at fighting, but he broke his vows, which is what it says right now. Amir Dubai saying, sorry, I couldn't get my super chats working. Here we go. Can I ask another question? Of course you can. What do you think will happen when those three meet? Those three, I assume you're referring to Jaime, Brienne, and Lady Stoneheart. Yes, so I mean, I've covered this a little bit already. So I think that we have to try and understand where each of these characters are coming from on this. Lady Stoneheart is trying to get Jaime Lannister because she's got a grudge against everybody who killed or played a part in the deaths of her family. And she has to hold him to account for what she charged him to do when she was Catelyn Stark. Now, so that's what's going to happen. There will be a trial of sorts, I'm absolutely sure. And I think that he will try and work his way out of it. I think that Brienne will stand up for him. A bit of an echo of what we had actually in season 8 on the show, when Jaime had a little bit of a mini trial. I think that he will have a sort of a mini trial here. I think Brienne will stand up for him. I think that he will be able to show that he has tried to honor his vow, and I think that he will give some evidences, including, as I say, quite possibly saying where Edmure Tully is, where Jeyne Westerling is, those kinds of things. So I think that's what's going to happen, and I think that he will manage to get out, and I think that it's entirely possible that this time Brienne is the person who helps him escape. So I don't think he'll die. I don't think anyone's going to die in that situation, but I think that Lady Stoneheart is not going to get exactly what she was wanting. Okay, so I think I'm caught up now again on the chat. Let's try and see where I was at on my questions in Patreon. Lady of the Leaves says, if Jaime and Cersei were to survive the destruction of King's Landing, what do you think would be their fate? I do think they'll die together, but it could be in another way. I think the worst way for them would be exiled to north of the Wall, imprisoned together in an unloving, unhappy relationship, and no new babies. I don't think Cersei was pregnant. I think she was going through menopause. Well, that last bit is entirely possible. What would happen if they were to survive the destruction? Well, I don't think we're going to see that. I think that they will die in this story, both of them. If they did survive, yeah, I think exile is probably the way for them. I don't think that Tyrion well, it would provide an interesting thing for Tyrion. What's he going to do? Because Cersei clearly wanted him to be dead. Is he going to have mercy on her or not? That's an interesting little take. But I honestly don't think it's going to come to that. I think that they will die. This idea of being sort of together, I think, yes, it will be something that they both would love and hate in equal measure. That's where their relationship has gone. Juliet O'Connor, I've got just a couple more questions, I think, now from my patrons. So now's a good time to drop some questions in the chat, so I'll try and get to them just a moment. Juliet O'Connor says, how do you view Jaime's role in the succession of the Lannister family and Casterly Rock? It appears that by the end of the story, all of the immediate heirs to Casterly Rock will be dead. To go out on a limb, if Jaime and Brienne do end up becoming a couple at some point, is there a chance that Brienne might have a child that would end up becoming the only possible heir? It would follow the legacy that seems to be going on in Brienne's family of single parenthood and somewhat murky parentage of the heirs. Well, yes, it would. I don't think that she will become pregnant. If she does, I don't think that the birth of that child would happen within the scope of the story. What we're not going to have, I'm pretty sure, is at the end of it a sort of a casting forward into the future kind of a few chapters, the 20 years later kind of idea about what, let's go back and see what all our heroes have been up to. I don't think we're going to get that. I think we're going to see the characters who survive in the aftermath of everything that's happened, and just enough for us to know the broad shape of what's going on. And that, I think, is that even if Brienne were pregnant, I don't think that the child would be born before the end of the book. So that's not, I think, going to be likely. And I don't think Jaime will survive in any event. So I like the idea, but I don't think we will see it come to, even if it is right, I don't think we're going to see it come to fruition. And in terms of the immediate heirs to Casterly Rock, one of the things that is the case in across the piece, really, in the books, is that there are many, many, many heirs all over the place for these kinds of places. So there are lots of Lannisters still living who could make a claim for it. But the issue is, once we get a new power in King's Landing or wherever it's going to be based, they will be the people deciding who's the lords of everywhere. And they may decide to keep it with the Lannisters, they may decide to give it to someone else as a sort of a reward for loyalty or something like that. That's the way this system would work, was that these things would be given out to families. It happened after Aegon's invasion, that they handed over the places where people were disloyal. They got handed over to people who were loyal. So all of that said, I like the idea that Tyrion will end up as the Lord of Casterly Rock, because his father never wanted him to have it, and yet he probably was the most competent person to be running it. And I think it just makes so much thematic sense for him to rule it at the end of the story. He might technically be based in King's Landing, but be the Lord of Casterly Rock, I think, would be a wonderfully apposite way to end his story. Fixable, is it possible Lady Stoneheart is Bloodraven? Ooh, no, I don't think. They were not actually Bloodraven. I don't think it's Bloodraven doing sort of inside Lady Stoneheart, making her do all of her things. However, there is a lot of the sort of the old magic connected with her. She, in the sense that she is dragged out of the water by Nymeria, who Arya is sort of walking into at the time through her sleep, and is brought back. This makes Lady Stoneheart actually quite unique, because she's brought back from the water. She's a Tully, it's a fish sort of symbolism. So she dies in the water, which kind of gives her this kind of patch face, water white kind of feel. She's clearly connected in with the Starks, and the Starks are the one who bring her out, and yet it is Beric who uses the effectively fire magic to be bringing her back. And so she is a fire white technically, but she's got all of these different things meshed into her. I don't think it's Bloodraven. I think Bloodraven is very aware of what's going on, but I don't think it is him working through her. Question from Rory Bradley, actually just saying, no question, Roberts, just a big fan, thank you. If you have any tea on hand, treat yourself to a gulp. I don't, I have water, but thank you. I normally have a cup of tea just before I start, water while I'm doing it, and a nice glass of wine after I've finished. So there you go. That's my drinking habits for live streams, if you're interested. Catherine Furseth, saying, this is my last question from my patrons, so as I say, now's a good time to drop things into the chat because I will come to them straight afterwards. Catherine Furseth saying, do you think Jaime's fate and arc will continue to the very end, with him forever being imprisoned in dualities he can't escape? For me, this seems to be the essence of Jaime, wanting to be a true knight, but with a reputation forever destroyed as an oathbreaker for doing the greater good, loving someone he knows he doesn't deserve, being both ruthless and empathic. Yeah, I think this, and I deliberately saved this one for the end because I think this is a fantastic way to kind of sum up Jaime. He is competing dualities. He is an oath breaker, and yet one of his big drives is keeping oaths. He is the person who is vilified for his greatest act of heroism. He is the person who, as you say, he's in love with somebody he knows he doesn't deserve, who all loves him even though she probably shouldn't, because, you know, it's not going to work. And this kind of dualities of who he is, he viewing himself as this great knight, and yet he's no longer able to fight because of his hand. These are the kind of the things which oppose each other within his character. Somebody asked very near the beginning of this how my theories and appreciations of A Song of Ice and Fire have changed over time. This, I think, is probably sums up where my thinking has changed most on Jaime. I did, first of all, think he had this character arc that starts off with him being this nasty, priggish person that we see in book one, and turning out for him to be the hero that he was all along. I think there's an element of that to him, but actually, as I've understood more about Jaime's character, I see a lot more of these dualities. I see a lot more of these competing priorities. I see a lot more of the angst within him, and that, I think, is what we're seeing. Is he is doing the hard work of trying to be a better person, at the same time being always drawn back to being person that he was originally, and that is the tension that we're going to see all the way through this. He's not just on a redemption arc, he's on a long, drawn out, angsty, working his way through the dualities of his character arc. It's not quite as catchy, but it's a lot more accurate. Let's have a quick dip into the chat. A lot of questions, a lot of talk about vegetables, which is fantastic. And somebody's saying that they're disappointed when they drank mead. Mead is a wonderful drink. I would highly recommend it if you've never tried it. Okay, I think I am probably reflective rambling, just very quick, good point here, saying Jaime Lannister is a great example of how having everything set up in your favor for whatever your circumstances are does not mean life won't have other plans for you. Yeah, he was the golden boy. He was going to inherit everything, and he was going to have everything. He was going to be the Kingsguard. He was going to have the woman he loved, even if he wasn't supposed to. He was going to be admired by everyone. But that's not the way the story goes. And it's him coming to terms with this is as much a part of everything else in his character. Okay, guys, thank you so much for that. This has been a really fun working through Jaime as a character. As I said, I think that I will be at some point soon, I'm going to be doing a video, probably just the other side of when I've done my Bloodraven series, finished that one off. I will do a video on Jaime and Lady Stoneheart and what happens with Brienne in that kind of melting pot in the Riverlands, because I think it's a fascinating discussion about what happens next, because we do not know, but we can draw out a few hints about what is quite likely based on our understanding of all of their motivations. So that's all to come. If you're watching this back a little bit later, if you look somewhere around here, in a moment you will see a link to other live streams I've done. If you look somewhere around here, you will find a link to my Patreon page if you want to either support the channel or get access to some stuff I do just for my patrons at all the different levels. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Okay, guys, that's all for now. I'll be back with another live stream this time next week. Not sure yet what it'll be, but keep an eye out on places like Twitter. I will let you know. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again soon.